Wonderful. I think we're going to get ready to start. I have been asked to give a disclaimer that I'm joining everyone from New York City. We are anticipating a flyover of some Air Force jets in solidarity with the healthcare professionals of New York City. So I will be going on mute, but if you do hear kind of like loud noise in the background, it's the tribute that's being played to the healthcare workers that are helping in the front lines of fighting the COVID pandemic here in the city. And of course, we're very, very grateful for all of the work that they do. We're now going to get started. I think we've got a good quorum of attendees on the line, and I'm delighted to be able to welcome everyone to this webinar, which is part of the series that APCO Worldwide has been hosting, as we consider ways in which we can engage and help our clients and partners plan for what is currently happening and what is also emerging to be a very fluid, unpredictable, and frankly, unprecedented landscape of the COVID pandemic. I'm delighted to be able to welcome what is a really outstanding panel of experts joining us today. Brett, maybe we can have a look at the next slide, which will help our participants on the line visualize people. We are joined by Ido Aharoni, who is really, I can't think of a better brand builder and nation builder to have on the line, a distinguished professor with New York University, but really the person that's really helped and was really the first head of Israel's brand management and nation branding. So thank you so much, Ido, for joining us. We are also joined by former Representative Steve Bartlett. Steve served in the House of Representatives and was mayor of the city of Dallas. I have already pulled a joke about, you know, what a great city to have, that it has its own TV series that generates a lot of attachment. But Steve has really been at the forefront during his term as mayor of putting economic revitalization at the heart of the city's development. We're also joined by Diane Dixon, who was council member and is former mayor of Newport Beach and is running for the California State Assembly representing the coastal cities in Orange County. Again, cities for which tourism is a major driver. And lastly, thank you so much for Carlos Gonzalez, the Director General of Visit Mexico. Mexico is the 7th most popular destination in the world. Tourism is a great driver of the economy, and we're delighted to be able to have one of our partners as we kind of come up with concrete examples and concrete ways in which we can think of how to revitalize and revive the tourism sector that has been so closely affected by this pandemic that has unfortunately cost so many lives. We've done some, for those of you that may not be so familiar with the work that APCO Worldwide does, as a consulting firm that helps clients really further their messaging and further ways in which they can really be impactful in how they reach out to the audiences that matter the most, we believe in data. We believe that our work has to be really grounded in the impact of and the analysis of what people are really both saying and are worried about. And with huge thanks to some of our experts in the field of data analytics, they use nature language processing algorithms to really map out and look at what the travel industry is saying around those post-pandemic predictions. I think at the moment, anyone who's a futurologist is really in big business trying to figure out how to take forward some of the issues and trying to plan for what will probably be a bumpy road ahead, not least because of the economic downturn that is expected, but also because of the particular challenges that the travel and tourism sector faces with the way in which its operations work, that it's not an easy stop and start, but rather it's a very complex process that requires hotels or airlines or even the food sector to be able to restart their operations. And we've done this analysis, which I think I'm going to share with everyone just because I think it puts out some very interesting points for us to bear in mind as we look ahead and try and kind of think through what we should be thinking as we're doing location branding and location repositioning and figuring out how to restart this sector of the economy. In the next slide, you actually see what the most major clusters and topics tell us. They tell us that there's two things that we need to be looking at when we're, or rather that the public and the experts are looking at when looking at travel. There's a big piece around destinations. How many of you have sat in your sofa as you're confined to quarantine and thought about, you know, I really want to get on a plane and I really want to go and see this place that I've always wanted to visit, or I'm remembering fondly locations that I visited in that are just very close to our hearts and to our ways of operating. Apologies, now you hear the jets that are doing the flyover. The second thing that we know is having a big impact is also the reality that there are practicalities around how the industry operates. We know that flexibility around cancellations and bookings, the key message that the industry is putting out that says, you know, defer, delay, don't cancel is an important one. We know that basically, if people are worried about money, sales, promotions, deals, and just are you going to be able to get a good bang for your buck in terms of travel is going to be important. And you obviously can't overturn in what is the middle of a health pandemic, the very basic travel, health, and safety considerations that I think are going to be at the forefront of everyone's mind. And what does this mean for travel? Brent, would you help us by clicking onto the next slide? These are the things where once we look at these nodal maps, this tells us that there are going to be three things that we're going to be having to focus on and that are going to be driving what people think about as they get ready to travel in a post-COVID scenario, or what I tend to refer to as the new normal. Health and safety is going to be very much top of mind. It's going to be, and I think some of our panelists are going to be ready to talk to us about what are those considerations. If we're all being careful, if we're all observing physical distancing, if we're all listening to health authorities, health and safety is going to be top of mind for people, and we're going to need to figure out how the travel sector adapts to meeting those concerns. Likewise, again, because we're in a pandemic, we know that people are thinking very much about family and their loved ones, and we know that this notion of family travel is going to be important. And lastly, which we can attribute, we think, to the predicted economic downturn, is going to be the key issue around travel sales, promotions, and deals. So I think this exercise is a very important one to give us some food for thought that we can unpick during this conversation. And without further ado, I wanted to ask Ido, perhaps you could go first with giving us some of your thoughts as to what this prompts you to think about. And also, you know, you've been at the heart of nation building for so long and for brand and positioning of locations. We'd love to hear your thoughts about what you'd like to put out to people to think about in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Judith, and for this wonderful overview of the research, which is eye-opening. I would like to say a few words about, you know, what decision makers on the part of the government should be doing, what regulators should be doing these days. And obviously, we're all here because tourism is such a big growth engine, right, in the world. We know that only last year, 2019, the global tourism industry generated $5.5 trillion of revenue. It's an industry that was responsible for hundreds of millions of jobs all over the world. And it's a major part of countries' economies. When you look at countries such as Spain and France, and I know that Turkey and Mexico were mentioned. I know that in our little country here in Israel, it's the one single largest industry. So tourism was viewed very favorably and very positively by decision makers all over the world. But something very, very interesting happened with the pandemic, because the pandemic is corresponding with the most chimeric, basic fear of human beings, which is infection of something that that is not known, that has no cure, that best case scenario, maybe one day there will be a vaccination. But also, it turns out that travel is the #1 agent of the pandemic. In other words, surprisingly, we expected, for example, the pandemic to hit hard refugee camps. It didn't happen. at least not for the time being. And the reason is because those refugee camps were not frequented by travelers. So in other words, the sector, which is such a big part of economic growth globally, is at risk, a major risk. And this could have tremendous, devastating economic repercussions worldwide. So what needs to happen? The first thing, what I would like to do is just to share with you several principles, 9 principles that I came up with, again, from a position of someone who spent 30 years in government and dealt actively with the marketing of my own nation. The idea that this is the time of collaboration and solidarity is beautiful on paper, and I would be the first to acknowledge the fact that the future international relations will be based on more collaboration. But make no mistake, competition will resume. There is no way in the world that a country like Spain, where incoming tourism is 30% of its economy, is just going to let it go. It's not going to happen. The competition will resume. It will resume fast, and we need to be prepared for a fight over every potential traveler, over every potential tourist. So the first principle, general reputation matters. What does it mean? It means that if your reputation pre-COVID-19 was weak, it's going to take longer for you to recover. If your reputation was tainted because of whatever reason, it could be crime, corruption, disorder, even untidy appearance, recovery, expect your recovery to take longer. In that respect, a country like Japan, who has a very strong reputation, their recovery time is going to be quicker and faster than other countries. Number 2, time is of the essence. There is no time to wait and see what happens. This is the time to draft your contingency plans. This is the time to come up with the long-term strategy. This is the time to engage in things that you previously considered to be expensive or even experimental. Number 3, proactiveness. Take advantage of this crisis to proactively do things you've always wanted to do and you were afraid to do. This is the time to think big and to do things that are extraordinary. Number 4, work counterintuitively. For example, budgetary behavior. We know that in times of crisis, decision makers, and you will hear from my esteemed co-panelists later, that we're in a position to make decisions in their communities. Decision makers in times of crisis, their instinct is to cut the budget. And number 1, they cut the marketing budget. Big mistake. This is the time to plan below the line micro marketing campaigns to promote the assets of your brand, of your destination, of your locale. The worst mistake that decision makers can make at this point is to cut their marketing budgets first. Number 5, domestic travel first. It corresponds very well with the finding of APCO's research. We're all waiting for the scientific community to come up with a vaccine, but until that vaccine comes up, we are actually going to see decision makers giving priority to domestic travel by car, and decision makers should open their domestic markets first to their own people, because that will be the oil that will turn the wheels of the economy again. This is the time to promote travel to the countryside, to invest in the marketing of regions, not just cities, not just towns, not just nations. This is the time to help owners of bed and breakfast, to teach them how to attract customers, to help them with the marketing efforts. This is the time to diffuse what we call the fear factor, because once people travel in their own vehicle with their family, just as the research suggested, it really diffuses the fear factor. Number 6, collaboration is essential. We can no longer think just in terms of our own community, my own nation, my own city, my own region. I have to begin to draft partnership programs, collaborative programs that are globally, there are global, there are continental, there are regional, recognize that sanitation is a big problem, and therefore there has to be a globally coordinated effort to come up with a globally recognized standard for what is sanitary, what is acceptable, what is safe. Just like the Geneva Convention deals and addresses the issue of war crimes, we need to be able to do that on the new front, sharing information, technology, services, human resources, and regional marketing efforts. Number 7, prioritize hygiene and cleanliness. It was already referred to in the study. In the new abnormal, one of the considerations of the traveler will be the level of cleanliness and hygiene. This is the time to double and maybe even triple the number of the employees in the sanitation department, if you're the mayor of a big city or if you're the minister in charge of public health. This is the time to announce national hygiene competitions, cleanliness competitions. This is the time to invest in the embellishment of your destination. This is the time to invest in tourism infrastructure. Number 8, improve your disaster preparedness. The pandemic, again, corresponds with our deepest fears. And so people are going to be afraid not just of pandemics, but they're going to be afraid of natural disasters altogether, from tsunami to volcanic eruptions and so on. And countries and cities will be tested by their ability to adapt and respond quickly to those challenges. And lastly, adopt flexibility in the workplace, which is going to be a very important factor. How quickly will you be able, as a decision maker, to mobilize and redeploy groups of employees and workers from one sector to another? That ability to demonstrate flexibility across sectors in the labor market, I think, is going to be critical in the recovery efforts of places when it comes to tourism. So that's what I had to say.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ido, for being so comprehensive and really, in your kind of 9 points, you've already outlined just a very clear roadmap and some of the critical issues that I hope other panelists will also be able to pick up on. I think the point around agility is really critical. The point about reputation remains, and I think we know and we've seen how brands, and that applies to locations, destinations, hotels, airlines, are going to be remembered by what they have done and have not done during this pandemic. I'd now like to turn over to Steve. And Steve, I mean, you were at the heart of really this whole revitalization of Dallas. What lessons would you share? What lessons, on the basis of your experience and what you've seen as a legislator, you addressed government officials, you know, from that legislation position, from having been a mayor, what are the insights that you have to share as we're rethinking about travel once it becomes safe to do so?
Well, thank you, Judith. And first, let me say, I think I know many of the people who are on the call participating in this just from the travel business and from the political business. So I say hello to my friends, and those of you who are not my friends yet will send me an email and we can become, or LinkedIn, we can become friends. I also want to commend, it's one of my joys is to be associated with APCO. APCO is such a world-class organization that brings state-of-the-art experts to everything, but they have a particular expertise in travel and tourism, and so it's a delight to be associated with them. I have 3 observations in mind from both, mostly mayor, but some from the Financial Services Roundtable, where I was CEO, and some from Congress. One is start with the end in mind, and that has to go a little bit deeper than just saying I want more travel. So focus on what you're actually trying to achieve in narrow segments. I'll give you an example. In Dallas, when we approached it, travel and tourism and convention business was a big part of our economy. So we started first by focusing on room nights, and that sounds obvious, but it's not. So for example, when I came in, we were bidding on the World Cup games, and we quickly realized that while hosting, which we ended up hosting a regional round of World Cup, so hosting a regional round of World Cup, was about 40,000 room nights, 2 nights with 20,000 international visitors. So we focused, in addition to the regional, we focused on the International Broadcast Center because that's where the room nights were. So we obtained 90 days with 5,000 people in Dallas for 90 days reporting on the events, technicians, reporters, writers, broadcasters, sports analysts for the international broadcast. So instead of 40,000 room nights, by getting the IBC, we got 450,000 room nights, 90 days times 5,000 people, and they were spread out, not all at one place. Second, we decided to focus on the business traveler. That was Dallas. That was our asset, because that also would lead to economic development, which was one of the needs that we had. Third is we focused on the central city. That was ours. Our central city was at that time, our downtown was at a major decline, and we wanted to do something to build excitement. So we focused on sporting events and music events and venues in downtown. And then last is the sales tax. And Diane, the mayor from Newport Beach, will be on in a minute, but sales tax is a big deal. And generating travel and tourism is the fastest way that you can increase your sales tax proceeds. We did find, by the way, when we got the Dallas Stars and National Hockey League team, we miscalculated by 1/3 because they have 2 intermissions instead of 1. We collected twice as much beer tax because of 2 intermissions. So we focused on sales tax, and that creates. Second is a city or venue or an organization should first look at what assets you have that you can bring to bear. Dallas, our biggest asset, was DFW Airport. So we were able to obtain the final round of 40 days and nights of NAFTA negotiations, because the people could, the officials could come. We had some 1,000 of them or more, could come to the city from Toronto or Mexico City or Washington, D.C., and then return overnight if they needed to with quick travel. And then third is I would take the approach on COVID and the epidemic to, in addition to meeting the minimum global standards, but to make COVID a competitive advantage rather than just say, well, we do what everybody else does. In post-COVID, the name of the game is safety, 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 personal safety. So construct different ways to have, we had this in Dallas, ambassadors on the streets with uniforms that would walk up to make suggestions to people. Whatever you can do with temperatures, taking guest temperatures when they arrive, or all kinds of things, whatever it takes to make your clients believe that this is the safest city or safest venue that you can come to. Second is technology. Many of these, the competition now is not whether they're going to go to Seattle or to Newport Beach, but whether they're going to have a virtual technology conference or whether they're going to be in person. So I think a venue has to meet both. So combine the in-person, but then also build in the virtual technology so they can have people that aren't there built in. And then last, I would emphasize flexibility in booking. I think what the business planners, meeting planners are really concentrating on is how much flexibility is there in booking this particular destination. So if we have another outbreak, can I cancel easily and with a great deal of flexibility? So I think they're interested in flexibility. And with that, I will turn it over to the other mayor on the panel, Diane.
Thank you so much, Steve. I think that that's a fantastic way of Diane. I mean, you're at the heart of beach locations. You've been dealing with the impact of the economy on this, and I think you're going to talk to us a little bit about that, which all the other panelists have also mentioned.
Yes, well, good morning. And again, let me just echo the thanks and appreciation that we all feel that just that APCO has brought us all together and to talk about a very important economic aspect of our lives. And just as we heard earlier about how important just to regain our economic sensibility is going to be through travel and bringing people to our communities. As I've been introduced, I'm a former mayor 2 times of Newport Beach, and I'm on my 6th year on the city council. And Newport Beach, it's the best job in the world, the best volunteer job in the world to serve this wonderful community. And we've done a lot of economic studies over the years, and I'll tell you how we're organized about that. But 2 years ago, we did an economic study of the importance of our harbor and the water and the beaches to the economic vitality of Newport Beach. And it's nearly $1 billion of related economic activity that has benefited our harbor, and our beaches contribute to the economic vitality of Newport Beach. And because it has historically been so important to the city, even before I ran for office, hospitality and the tourism industry is fundamental. Obviously, we're 20 minutes from Disneyland, and so the growth of Orange County over the last 50, 60 years has coincided with the attractiveness of coming to Southern California to the beaches. So about, I'd say 10 years ago, maybe a little long, we've always had a meeting and convention bureau, as most cities do. About 10 or 12, maybe it's longer, but in my time, I'm aware of it, we repurposed our meetings and convention organization, and we call it Visit Newport Beach. It is the marketing arm of the city. And in fact, the head of Visit Newport Beach is participating on this call, Gary Sherwin, and he is nationally, if not internationally, known about how he has helped other cities transform their marketing, because bringing people, visitors, into your community to help not only sales tax, but we call it transient occupancy tax or hospitality tax. In the city of Newport Beach, we have a general fund budget before the pandemic was about $215 million. It's about 315 with enterprise funds, but our general fund budget is funded by, as we know, property taxes. Hopefully they're going to stay pretty stable for the next couple of years at least. And a TOT. Here's some slides that Brenda's put up. The economic impact of tourism in Newport Beach before COVID, $1.2 billion tourism industry pre-COVID. 7.3 million is annual Newport Beach visitors, and 1.2 billion is annual visitor spending. So that's sales tax, that's TOT, that's individual consumer travel, that's meetings and convention travel. And our Visit Newport Beach organization has expanded its scope, if you will, because they're funded by revenues that they bring into the city. And they, the more successfully they operate and bring in revenues, the more they can do. I really appreciate the point from Idor that coming out of the business world where I was for my career in the communications and marketing world, marketing funds are the first, budgets are the first to go typically in corporations. And we are actually tonight, beginning city council meeting tonight, going through our budget review. Fortunately, Visit Newport Beach is not on the chopping block at all, because we respect and value those revenue sources that we have to maintain. That $43 million feeds into our general fund operating budget, and we have to protect that. That's hotels, and it's also recently residential through short-term lodging that has just appeared on the scene 5 years ago with Airbnb, and that's about a $5 million. That's the permit fees that the city gets, and TOT fees that the city gets from Airbnb. That's been a struggle to get that money from Airbnb, but we're still working on it. But Visit Newport Beach likes to talk about the jobs that are supported. So fundamentally, very importantly, tourism drives Newport Beach. Let's go to the next slide just to show the effect. The occupancy rate is typically in the high 70s, 80s, sometimes 90s in Newport Beach in the summer. Now, and so that was before COVID. Now, after COVID, the next number will come up, I think. But anyway, if it doesn't, it's about, is that slide there? Hold on. All right. Well, maybe there it goes. Okay. Thank you, Brent. So occupancy now is about 29, if not lower percent. So in the revenue, per available room was about $192. Now it's $80. So we're seeing a dramatic shift. So when we talk about our budget tonight at the city council meeting, we know that revenues from TOT are taking a significant hit. And we need to bring those back. So let's talk about what we are going to do going forward. If you want to flip to the next slide. This gives you just a quick visual in terms of the jobless claims, obviously U.S. jobless claims. So that's going to have a significant effect on our target marketing. Okay, next slide. our recovery plan going forward. Let me get my slide in front of me. What Visit Newport Beach is looking at the embracing quick, I'll just read some key points from the slide, embracing quick and efficient recovery programs. Speaker Steve mentioned also just to go after the people that the families and the people who are inclined to travel, embrace low-cost targeted programs to customers, target affluent visitors who still have the propensity to spend, and capitalize on pent-up demand. And strengthen relationships is so key. The meeting planners that feed our tax revenues are really critical to restoring their confidence in Newport Beach. And so they will begin to plan. Again, that would only be a year from now, if we're lucky, that those meetings begin to appear. Okay, next slide. We talked earlier about close to home. So this is the targeted marketing scope geographically for Newport Beach, the first wave of marketing in the immediate Los Angeles County, Orange County areas where people can drive. They don't have to get on an airplane. They can drive. Similarly, they can drive from all of these areas. People can drive to Newport Beach. So when Visit Newport Beach's typical targeted marketing is not only nationally, but international to the Middle East and to the UK and to Western Europe. This is really a pullback in terms of the target audience, target marketing audience during this initial wave. Not to exclude those other international areas, but once confidence returns in terms of travel, airplane travel, that marketing will also occur. All right. Next slide. So going forward, how do we do this? To allocate the resources and messaging to more than 20 million residents in Southern California within that sphere we just showed, with a focus on public relations and digital marketing, just like Steve was talking about technology. That's how we're going to reach people. In fact, Visit Newport Beach does an outstanding job every year to provide an annual report of where their marketing dollars go and how and who are the target audiences. And truly the targeted audiences have been shifting as the younger generation, the millennial generation and the younger professionals have been, of course, they're the technology gurus as well. And so reaching these people through digital marketing is really the #1 and fundamental way. And to support our local hotels with group meetings and sales, we want our hotels to return. The Irvine Company, which owns in Newport Beach, it's called Fashion Island Hotel, and in Irvine they own, or the city of Irvine, they own Hotel Irvine, plus Pelican Hill. Pelican Hill is staying open, but Irvine Company just announced this week that they are closing indefinitely the Fashion Island Hotel and Hotel Irvine. It doesn't, from what their reports say, it's not as dire. They're going to do some repositioning. The company is privately owned, and so they're in a position they could do this capital investment to really remake their facilities to appeal to a new type of traveler. Of course, the safety and health issues, concerns that their customers will have, their guests will have. So it'll be interesting. I don't know what they're going to do. It'll be interesting to see what the Irvine Company is doing, but they're investing in a new type of hospitality to the new type of traveler in the post-COVID world. And certainly targeting in the Western US where people can drive or get here easily. Next slide, if we could. Okay, so just kind of the wrap up of what Visit Newport Beach and what we as electeds and policymakers are really focusing on. We obviously, as we know, health and safety of visitors is paramount. It's the #1 issue to convince people to travel anywhere, and hopefully Newport Beach. And all tourism messaging must include assurances of community safety and protocols. And frankly, what I just learned just listening is my job as a council person is to make sure we continue that investment. I know in the budget discussion tonight, there's street maintenance. We have a street maintenance contract up for review tonight. We've got to do more than just think this is routine. We have to do over and above because Newport Beach has to maintain its pristine reputation as a travel destination. So I have a job to make sure we protect our marketing as well as our facilities and public space maintenance, because that is going to be key to keep our community sparkling clean. And the community must be committed to this on a voluntary standpoint, since enforcement by public entities will be difficult if not impossible. It's just, how do we enforce? I mean, that's an issue, that's a whole other conference, just trying to protect our beaches, protect our residents, protect our visitors. We can't have a police person on every corner. People are not social distancing. I don't even know if is anyone on this call seen the national news about Newport Beach? We made the news because
we
of
have
all,
a question for you about that, in fact,
Yeah.
Diane, where someone wanted to know what
I'll
your
come
thoughts
back to
were.
that. And we're going to be, we have a meeting 3 o'clock Pacific time, a special meeting this afternoon, just to talk about what we are going to do about our beaches, because the governor of the state has actually called us out. So we have to address that. And the communities all communities must be clear in what standards need to be applied uniformly to give visitors some assurance that all efforts are made for their safety. And Steve made a very good point, and I took note of that, is we don't want to just do what everybody is doing. We have to go over and above and create value there. The next slide, and establish guidelines. So visitors, customers, patrons, everyone who walks into a restaurant, this isn't just hotels, it's restaurant. I've talked with our restaurant owners, our Newport Beach Restaurant Association, which incidentally is kind of a part of Visit Newport Beach. They work together in Restaurant Week, and that's going to be a great effort for Restaurant Week. I could see it now about everybody who's the cleanest. Establish clear guidelines for visitors and their employees, and the site, the facilities, and the facilities employees, so they can demonstrate personal responsibility and improved health and safety standards. And that comes at a cost. So we're going to be seeing, when businesses have been hurt so significantly by this economic crisis, that they have to invest in I've got a slide there, have to invest in more costs to make sure that they are ensuring necessary social distancing. And frankly, a practical reason is a challenge. So in restaurants, they're not going to be able to operate at the full capacity they normally do. It's probably going to be 50% of that capacity, spacing tables. So their revenues are going to be significantly impacted going forward until we emerge through this. And while some visitors are now clearly tired of stay at home, and that'll be the segue into the beach discussion, with orders and shutdowns, a majority of visitors feel that their safety is important and will support businesses that look after their well-being. So right now, from a data standpoint, I saw a survey of Californians. 76% of Californians don't want anything to resume back to normal, allegedly in the survey, until everybody is sure that it's healthy to do so. This is really what I'd like to hear too from the group to discuss. We hear on the news today that some states, some governors are accelerating or starting to get back to business at a different level, depending on the state, depending on the locale. So we're going to be seeing right now, literally today, people saying, people in Newport Beach say, enough already, we're ready. And the numbers actually support that. We've had in Orange County, 50 deaths in Orange County. So our case numbers are extremely low for a county that's 7 or 8 million. So, but we have to convince the governor and the people that we're doing this responsibly. So if you'd like me to talk just a little bit about, Judith, if you want to ask
Sure,
a question.
why don't you take that question that we had, Diane, where we had a question about how they'd love to hear your point of view about this debate that's broken out over the last few days about the crowds that gathered on California's beaches because the weather was gorgeous and you've got amazing beaches.
Yes, and we've been anticipating this. In Newport Beach, the way that our beach is situated in the residential properties, homes, and these are not mansions, these are small lot homes that have been in the same small lots for 100 years aligning the beach. Our beaches are open. Frankly, it's been very confusing because the state, these are beaches that are managed by the city of Newport Beach. They are not state beaches. Governor Newsom closed some, not all, of the state beaches. In Orange County, Huntington Beach has been open, Newport Beach has been open, Carlsbad was closed, San Clemente was closed, San Diego closed. And so it's been a patchwork of open and closed. So Newport Beach became a funnel because most of these beaches were closed. So this is what we saw. What happened last week when was the really first day of total sun? There wasn't a marine layer on Friday. And people are just pent up. They wanted to get out of their homes. And so where to go? They want to go to Newport Beach, which they would typically do on a busy summer, on any kind of beautiful summer day. All right, the numbers are last Friday, 40,000 people on our beach on Saturday, another 40,000 on our beach on Saturday, and the lifeguards do these counts. On Sunday, we did have a marine layer for half the day, so that cut down. And so we had about 10,000. So tonight, it's this afternoon in our special meeting, and my emails and all council members in the last 24, 48 hours have been, I'm surprised my computer's still functioning. I'd say I've gotten 500 emails. Half of them say close the beach. Half of them say open the beach, and then variations within that. Governor Newsom called us out as being irresponsible and examples of not managing the beach situation. So today I'm dealing with people who say, don't close the beach. Don't close the beach. We need to get out and have fresh air. So here's what I'm hearing from the medical community. Our Hoag Hospital, which incidentally, that's part of the economic problem. They are empty. Their beds are empty. They have 8 COVID patients in the hospital, and they have 350 empty beds. People are not going to the doctors, and this is a real economic issue for our house all over the country. So the doctors and infectious disease doctors tell me that we in Newport Beach or in Orange County, we're on the slope of the downside significantly. And also important point, and I'll be saying this afternoon at the council meeting, is that studies are now reputable studies, definitive studies are showing that COVID is contracted within a confined environment, a cloistered environment. Could be a nursing home, sadly. It could be a multi-unit family apartment building type environment. Could be public transportation. People need to get, no one is going to get COVID sitting on a towel on a beach. But the fear virus, which doctors call what we are going through, is the fear virus. People are so afraid. So we have to give all people confidence, our residents, our visitors. We do want people to come, but we have to manage. We're not going to close the beach. We're just going to manage how people come into the city. I hope we could do this. We got the police, the lifeguards, volunteers. We're all going to manage this for this weekend. But we at the same time, we want our businesses to reopen. We have 40,000 people coming into our city, but all of our businesses, our restaurants are closed. Our hotels are closed. It's really very sad. And we're trying to figure it out. But most importantly, we want business to resume to normal. We've got a beautiful city. All these cities in the world are going to be, will be the cleanest. All of us will be the cleanest, most efficient destinations for families and others and businesses to travel. It will really be a new way of traveling. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to do a little soapbox on Newport Beach, because we've got to get ourselves back in order. We all
feel we want to go visit, and hopefully, you know, and it's encouraging to hear signs of slowdown and the curve flattening. So that I think gives everyone a lot of hope. I think before we open up for further discussion, and I just want to remind people that there is a Q&A function. There's also a chat function. So please do put your questions in there. We're looking at them. There's a lot to discuss. If we can extend time, we're happy to do so. If not, we'll get back to people individually and try and connect the answers. And now I want to turn over to Carlos, because Carlos, you know, you had an amazing vision for Visit Mexico. You were putting in place a solution and an approach to tourism destination that was really kind of breaking barriers, I think, in terms of technology, data, and just inspiration. And then the pandemic hit. And then what Ido predicted happened, your budgets were slashed, and all of a sudden you're operating with having to revamp an economy with limited amounts of money. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing around that. And I should say, just before we start, that APCO had the honor of supporting the Mexican government during the H1N1 pandemic. So in the way for us to be back in the situation of partnering with Visit Mexico is one where we're really drawing on the lessons of what we learned in the past about how do you revitalize and how do you draw on insights, data, and emotional appeal to really help drive travelers back and feel safe after a pandemic.
Thanks, Judith. Hi, everyone. And I'm amazed to hear the amazing experience of Steve, Diane, and Ido talking about what they have been doing and what's the vision for the counties that where they live and the cities where they live. Here in Mexico, I want to like give you a brief context of what's happening in Mexico as a country. As you may know, there's a new president since last year. There's a new president who has like a distinctive vision of the economy that the past administrations. And with this new vision of the economy, where he's focused on the most needed, he started cutting a lot of budgets in a lot of trusts that were working in the prior administrations. And one of these cuts was the tourism budget. So the past administration, we had like 25 billion pesos, and we passed to have now like 0 pesos in the tourism promotion business. And with that the scenario that we were really worried about the scenario, a private entity that I form part of, that we are 3 partners of this private entity, we made a bet with the government, and we start a project where the assets that they have been running for a lot of time didn't like pass out or be in a draw without using them. So with the private money and private enterprises, hotels, and some brands, we started this new Visit Mexico project that it's also the official one, but with new approaches. When we look up the challenges that we have with the cut of the budget and the position of Mexico as being the 7th most visited country in the world, we had to establish 3 main objectives to this transformation. And the first one was, how can we democratize the opportunities for all the small and medium tourism providers? And how can we digitize them with Google My Business webpage, dashboards, apps, so they can answer inquiries about their products? And how can we give them, all of them, e-commerce solutions so they can transaction and have the opportunity to sell something to the international travelers? And the second objective was, how can we assure the budget, and how can we transition into a Mexican promotion where 100% of this promotion is data-driven decisions? There's not a peso, nor a dollar that we invest in that doesn't give us that data, or that we doesn't have data to invest in. So that's a main breakthrough on what we're doing. And the third main objective of this was, how can we digitize all the travel agencies in Mexico so we can integrate local and regional products that helps every family, and to digitize all the content in the tourism area and the tourism sector in Mexico. So that were our main objectives. And then the COVID hit. So we had to evolve on those main objectives, and how are we gonna treat this pandemic and this crisis in Mexico, and how can we gather the data and the industry so we can make one clear messages. And with the COVID and the pandemic hitting in Mexico, we have to remember that we're 3 weeks behind the US pandemic curve, or the stats in the United States. So we have to plan to the safety to be in our houses and to communicate that first. But also we started this main strategy that has five main points of main courses of action. And the first course of action was, how can we implement a platform, a social platform? We have an Israeli platform that we're working with, a great platform to make this advanced social listening. So how can we monitor, and how can we get the official statements of the strategic countries that we have interest? And additional, how can we have the social mood or the social listening of those countries, so we can have the official statements and the people statements in social media? And with that, we can form an communication strategy for those countries that we're interested in. We have 5 main countries that we're launching messages. The first one is Canada, United States, Australia, United Kingdom, Colombia, and China. So with the gather of the data that we're having of the social listening, and with the official statements of the countries, we can sum up messages and create messages that maybe you're going to see if after my points, Judith can pass the one example of the messages that we're sending to those countries. So that was the first course of action, the social listening, and to understand the data that the countries are putting into. The second one is how can we communicate an empathic messages, and how can we generate this brand awareness without selling and without making a call to action because of the situation of the countries. But how can we position Mexico as this empathic country that wants to welcome every citizen again, but in this time we have to wait, everyone has to be safe. And how can we prepare the last stage of the strategy where we can make these call to actions with the countries, the strategic countries, and within the national market. The third course of action was we start developing new products and cooperate with neighbors. We're starting to, as Ido said, how can we start cooperating with US and South American countries to promote some products? For example, how can California and Baja California can make a wine tasting product, so the long distance travel of Asian traveling or European travel can visit Neipa and can visit Valle de Guadalupe in the same travel, or the sustainable travel or the long distance travel that want to visit Costa Rica can visit Costa Rica and Chiapas and Oaxaca in the south of Mexico, and make these cross-marketing efforts and these products, new products, so we can understand the need of these adventure and young travelers that are going to travel right now, but helping each other in this regional or international cooperation to boost the industry right now. And the fourth course of action was how can we democratize the economy? So we're creating new road trips in Mexico, new attractions, new experience, where people can grab his car and just drive in no more than 3 hours and visit this new route that we are creating. We are digitizing the small and medium tourism providers, so they can be prepared to the recovery stage, and also digitizing the 100% of the travel agencies in Mexico. So when we made these road trips, new road trips, we have the travel agencies that can sell this product and can promote this product and giving certainty to their clients or to their customers. We think that the travel agencies are going to have a main impact, and it's going to be the main course that we can help with, because when people want to buy from an OTA, Expedia, Book, they don't have contact with no one. The travel agencies can give that certainty and explain the safetiness of the new route, the new product, and how can Mexican nationals can travel within 3 hours, grabbing his car with his family and having this great experience with all the safety needed. And the last thing in this democratizing the economy is we're making those virtual auctions for the B2B markets. How can the big partners, the hotels, the product experience and the amusement parks can have these auctions in great prices for the international buyers. And the second one is these hot sales or offer sales in the B2C market, where the products can be bought by a really good price and have this good experience for the Mexican nationals, and so we can activate this local agenda. And the fifth one is how can we micro-target and how can we define messages for each of the audience that we're interested. For example, when we're running the social listening platform, and having the data of the governments, we know that we have to custom messages, for example, for the young travelers, the backpackers, the adventure travel, where what they are looking is to have new experience and to have these hot deals and know another country. And another message is it's for the baby boomers, the meeting industry, the luxury industry, where they are consuming the safetiness of the travel, the sanity measures that the countries are going to implement. So those are the 5 main objectives and main courses of action that we're implementing right now, we're doing it with no budget of the government, just with private money and partnering with the industry, so everyone can put into a main basket or a main account the money that it's needed to implement this promotion and to have the agility to move fast without all the government contractual process that is needed, and it's slower than the thing that we're doing. So that's the approach of what we're doing here in Mexico. I don't know, Judith, if you can transmit or go live with the message for Canada.
Absolutely. So we're just going to give Brent a couple of seconds to share the message that's going out to Canada. I'm talking over so there's no silence.
My lovely friend, it's time to prepare a homemade poutine, surrounded by our loved ones, sharing games, maple treats, and memories. Here at home, we are doing the same. Remember the last time you visited me? When you discovered our ancient worlds and breathtaking towns. I'm still smiling about our vineyard experience and our Charo friends. But my all-time favorite will always be our beach day enjoying the sun and our stargazing camp. We are also staying safe, but thinking always about the future. I promise, when we meet again, I'll take you to try our colorful enchiladas. You'll love them. But for now, don't forget to add to that poutine the family's special ingredient. Love you soon, Mexico.
Thank you so much, Carlos. So this is, this is a live demonstration of some of the messaging that Carlos mentioned is going out to some of the key markets of destinations for Mexico. And I think this gives a very good example of that emotional connection that brands are hoping to build while at the same time acting responsibly. Because I think one of the key topics that has emerged from this conversation is about how the tourism sector is going to have to rebuild itself. The questions around trust, the questions around safety are some of those key ones. I know that we have 11 questions that we need to answer, and we are at time. I'm just going to ask the panel really quickly whether you have 10-15 minutes that you can stay on. If people have that time, we can indulge perhaps on those that are able to stay on. The recording will be available. You will get an email confirming where the recording can be found, and in that email address, again, please feel free to send us any of the questions that you may have if you need to leave. But I think we've got some really great questions that I think you've already touched on some of them, like for instance the dual destination point. If people are going to have to take that risk of getting around and getting to travel, what are the opportunities around for visiting more than one destination? I think, Carlos, you talked of some interesting ideas around how that could happen binationally and not just within the national context, which I think is really interesting. I think we had another question about reputation and unsafe reputations, which I think you might want to answer, Carlos, because it's actually relevant to some of the work that I know that you've been doing, which says to Ido's point, destinations that have reputation for lack of safety, such as drug or crime, are going to have to overcome those challenges in addition to the COVID responses. So I don't know if you want to take that one first, and then we can start addressing others.
Yeah, obviously here in Mexico, we have like those main issues that we have been going through like the past 20 years, 30 years, that the insecurity, the drug cartels, and some of the insecurity issues that had been happening in some of the places on the country. So this strategy addition, if we sum up the COVID situation, we have to start like implementing messages. That's the first one, where we make an honest promise, where we approach the sensitive subject in the security, or where are the safety zones that you should travel. And the main effort that we're doing is how can we implement in the main tourism areas, for example, Quintana Roo, Los Cabos, or the main cities, this new structures on how can we get the sum of all the industry to have this new standard. First, this new sanity standard that they have been working in, and the second one is how can we implement this new security issue, new security policy, and new ways that to detect the main tourism area and protect them to communicate the right messages. But right now here in Mexico, the deal is how can we in this recovery from the COVID target the nationals that are some of used to the insecurity and have less issues with it, so we can boost the economy faster, and then approach the international travelers in these main cities, main tourism cities in Mexico, so we can invite them to come and show them the new ways that Mexico is planning to attract them and to keep them safe in the cities.
Thank you, Carlos. Ido, I wonder whether, we also had a question for you in this regard in terms of cooperation. What's your guidance and your thinking as countries and regions open up? Should they be thinking about cross-destination deals, a visit to Paris and Madrid, Tel Aviv, and you go somewhere else? What's your thought about that? Sorry, you're on mute, Ido. So.
Right. Thank you. So the idea of packaging in travel marketing is well known. I think it will become the new standard. As I said before, it will be about regional marketing, not necessarily a city. And as Steve pointed out, we're all fighting the same enemy. It's not that the competition is, we are, the dilemma here is whether people are going to stay home or not. And I have to tell you from what we learned from the Israeli experience, because Israel is a very unique case study, and we can learn a lot from what happened here. Because Israel, in many ways, although we do have the Mediterranean, access to the Mediterranean, Israel in many ways is landlocked. And the world is experiencing now what we have been experiencing for many, many years. It's impossible for people, let's say you live in Italy and you just want to take your car and drive to Jerusalem, you can't do that. And it's a shorter distance than from Chicago to Aspen. And so you just can't do that because Israel was inaccessible via external ground transportation. So now with air and sea travel gone, we are now, and by the way, we were able to quadruple the number of incoming tourists in the last 15 years. And the way it was done is through packaging. It was done through very generous governmental subsidies. The subsidies, the agreements were signed between the government through its Ministry of Tourism and the airlines, not through tour operators. The airlines were rewarded for every foreign traveler that they brought to Israel. And it was done through massive investment in marketing that goes below the line, meaning micro-marketing campaigns, not necessarily the old blanket advertising campaigns that we're familiar with. I don't think they're going to work. Also remember that the amount of time that we all spend at home online allowed micro-marketers to gather so much information about us, about our preferences, about our behavior, about our online patterns, that the level of accuracy and predictability is unprecedented. So it will be very, very cost effective for Newport Beach and for Dallas to work with micro-marketers and to try and get more for the dollar in marketing.
Thank you, Ido. That's a really great point. And I think one of the things that we have heard about is this both refinement of the industry, the reinvention that's going to have to come with a heightened interest on security and safety, but also just the additional points around what will this mean for the gig economy. And I just want us to thank Diane, who's had to leave, but gave us really great insights. And I wanted to take this question coming up about, you know, what do we think is going to happen to the gig economy? Are the Airbnbs and the Ubers of the world going to come out stronger? Are they going to suffer along with the rest of the industry? And what can government and business do together to promote the entire tourism ecosystem? I think this is kind of like one of the big debates and questions that everyone has, is this collaboration at different levels.
Well, I think gig economy is the future. It's already happening. I think that what will suffer a great deal is commercial real estate, and companies will come to realize that it will be easier to outsource a lot of the tasks to freelancers, and they don't really care what the freelancer is. I've been working with people in Spain during this crisis. I've been working with people in, you know, all over the world using Fiverr.com, which is a beautiful gig economy platform of freelancers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Steve, I don't know if you want to add something to this gig economy point, because I know that, you know, it's at the heart of economic revitalization. Sorry, you're on mute, Steve. Not yet. Hold on one second. We can. Now we can.
Okay.
We should be able to hear
Well,
you.
the gig economy is the future. It's also the present. So the gig economy and Airbnb and Uber, they're in the same boat as everyone else because of the decline overall. So my sense is Ito is right. The gig economy will take a disproportionate share of the growth coming back. And of course, the challenge for the traditional economy is figuring out how to accepting that and figuring out how to make it work for them by various kinds of cost shares and code shares, and opening up a swimming pool to the 3 Airbnbs in the area, that kind of thing. So there are ways that the gig economy is a reality, and it will come back like everyone else when the safety issue in travel is solved and travel is back on the screen.
Thank you. I think we also had a lot of questions around safety. Obviously, you know, the behavioral and the epidemiology around this particular virus is unknown. The timelines for coming up with vaccines and what, you know, just a greater understanding of whether antibodies really mean that you're not susceptible to infection again are still unknown. There's a lot of questions, and all the modeling really points to kind of second wave. So this comes up to questions around what do you think is going to happen around safety standards at airports? What do you think is going to happen around certification? What about training? What does this mean? I think, you know, we've heard about SMEs and just some of the points around how you have to upskill them. You know, what do you anticipate if you were able to look into your crystal ball? What do you think is going to happen in that regard?
Well, let me try that one. First of all of these safety is number one for the foreseeable future. We can't get travelers to come to your city or my city unless we can show them, not just tell them, but we are above reproach on personal safety. So, for example, if we have difficulty getting the citizens of Dallas or Austin or New York City, someone to wear masks, well, then you have to solve that problem. You have to say, no, you have to wear masks, and then make the masks a little more pleasant by putting on the mask New York or beachwear or some kind of a mask that also provides your message as opposed to just a white mask. So there are ways to take those masks and make them work for you instead of against you. Each of the safety issues, though, while there will be at the government level the imposition of safety requirements, I think the destinations can create their own above and beyond that and actually solve the problem. Each of these problems has a solution. It has to be creative, but the solution is not written down somewhere. I'll give you an example out of Dallas. We discovered that the people of Dallas and our visitors believed that downtown was a dangerous place, and in part because it was not well lighted. It looked dark when the sun went down. And so we doubled the illumination of our streets streetscape in downtown Dallas in the space of 4 weeks. We did it by changing the light bulbs and saved and paid for the light bulbs with energy. And that created, people were starting to say, oh, you've really done something here. It looks safer. We also put cops on horseback, on bicycles. We put ambassadors with special uniforms. And so there's nothing that says safe more than cops on horseback. Diane's not on the call anymore, but they could put cops on horseback on the beach and say beach patrol, and the police on horseback walks up to a group that are not practicing social distance and sort of moves their horse in and say, why don't you separate just a bit? So make things fun and entertaining and inviting, but also make sure you're solving the problem and doing it in a very visible way. Each of these problems has a solution that competitive destinations can come up with their own solution.
And if I may add to that, I think that since the defining issue of the relationship between customers and marketers is based on trust, really trust is a defining issue of our time, and it tightly linked to the issue of safety. I think that what is going to be required is a great deal of transparency on the very same things that Steve so accurately pointed out. Not only that we will have to do those things, we'll have to be transparent about it. The other thing that will have to happen is that an internationally recognized standard is a must.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 19 years after 9/11, and we still don't have an internationally recognized standard when it comes to airport screenings. In some countries, you have to take off your shoes. In some countries, you don't have to take off your shoes. In some countries, you have to take out your laptop. In some, I mean, it's still confusing, and the consumer is losing trust. That's the biggest erosion in trust, is lack of internationally acceptable, recognizable standard. Now, whose job is to do it? Obviously, the multilateral arena is supposed to produce such a standard, very similar to what happened with the Geneva Convention. And this will have to happen also with the response to disasters of the caliber of a pandemic.
Ito, Ambassador, let me say, and you're right, it ought to happen. I don't, but it doesn't have to happen. It hasn't happened yet. So each of the venues has to then answer the question for their own customers and constituents. I know Hilton is on the call. I can't imagine that Hilton will reopen without having masks that say Hilton lives, or temperatures, taking temperature of guests that walk in the front door. That may not be required as a global protocol, but it can be done by Hilton, and Hilton will then generate much greater awareness and belief of personal safety, and therefore more customers.
Well, I think, Ido, you raised the point about how the competition is going to get tougher, right? If we know that people in some of the surveys and the polls that we've been doing of the general public in the US in the response to the pandemic, we already know that we anticipate a 50% decrease in US travel. So that means that that remaining 50% is going to be fought over for all the destinations. And every single item, like, are you adhering to a standard? Have you created your own? Are you communicating about it? Are you being loud and clear and transparent about it? Those are all going to be competitive advantages. I think as a final question, I'm just going to take something that will hopefully take us into other parts of the world. And we have a great question from Joyce, who said that COVID-19 is an equalizer, but it doesn't actually impact tourism and cities and regions in the same way. The challenges of tourism post-COVID in developing countries are going to be different. And so what are your thoughts for places like Africa, China, or other kind of developing countries as to how they can boost their tourism? And maybe we can take that and your final comments from each of you, and then we'll just go to a close. So maybe, Carlos, maybe I can start with you, if any thoughts that you may have for boosting tourism in the developing world, and closing comments.
Well, I think the main issue for the developing countries, and think about Mexico, is the local economy. First, you know how they think, how can you boost the local travel, and to think in the industry, and the local industry is going to be the main thing that us as countries with these safety issues and other issues have to do. And the second one is that how can we integrate new products, new experience, and as Ido said and as Steve said, how can we show the world that we're ready to receive tourism in a safe way and adopting these standards so the international travelers can fly in and have a great experience. And maybe for us with the issues that we have and us as a private company, with the issues that sometimes the decisions of the government are slower than the path of the economy, than the pace of the evolution of the COVID. Maybe we have to be like helping each other with the industry, and as Steve said, to rely on the big hotels and the international companies that works in Mexico. They can implement faster, easier, and much more effectively sanity measures and protocols than the government itself. Then I think in the development countries, as just to sum up, we have to focus on the local tourism, then develop new products and regional products. And the third one, to be supported by the private industry and the big companies so they can implement first these measures, these strategies. And with those actions, then the government can add up to the strategies and follow up the international standards that these companies are doing.
So let me.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, yeah. So I'd have two. That's good, Carlos. You're right. I'd have a couple of observations. I'm in my other life, I'm also an adventure traveler. So all the way to the top of Kilimanjaro. So thank you very much. Hold the applause. So I would say for the developing world, first be specific on what you're doing. Specifically what you're doing to provide for personal safety. Be specific on how you make the case that a trip to Peru is safer than anything else that you can be doing because of social distance. Because sort of a social distancing comes easy on the Inca Trail. So, but be specific on masks, on protocols, on temperatures, on all kinds of things, on social distancing. And then second is book the future trips. Don't try to book a trip for next week. No one's going to take it. But offer discounts and promotions and special promotions. If you will book a trip that will start on the anniversary of today, 1 year from today, we will give you pick a number, a 50% discount. So don't try to sell something that no one's going to buy, which is a trip that leaves next Saturday. But book a trip for the future, and the future will come, and you'll have. And then also, by the way, as I said earlier, build in some really flexible cancellation clauses because people are suspicious they'll get hooked into something they can't get out of. And so say it up front. So this is a booking in which we're making a commitment to you, but you don't have to make a commitment to us if safety comes between us.
Thank you. Ido, closing thoughts from you and reactions on this.
Yeah, so the foundational element underneath safety is obviously the general reputation of the place. And my recommendation is for places in Africa and other places that are not enjoying their share of the tourism, global tourism pie, is to begin to behave and think like a brand. What does it mean to behave and think like a brand? Is to crystallize for themselves what is their main offering first. What is their value proposition? Why should the traveler consider them as a destination, whether it's Nigeria or Cameroon? And then once they figured it out, then their job is to be able to effectively communicate that relative advantage to relevant audiences. Because what we're seeing right now is a lot of blanket art advertising. I mean, pre-crisis, blanket advertising that didn't really target a specific, and I've been studying many of the campaigns that took place in Africa, from Nigeria, the heart of Africa, to the pride of South Africa, and so on and so forth. And I've seen this time and again. The strategy is not targeted enough. The strategy is not crystal clear, and the methodology of conveying the strategy is relying on old school traditional advertising rather than micro-targeting. And I truly believe that micro-targeting is the way of the future, just as gig economy is the way of the future. And I think that's the way for them to attract travelers, just like Steve, who described the type of traveler he is, looking for special adventures. There are a lot of people that are into long distance running, mountain climbing, rafting, and so on and so forth.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much to those that have joined us remotely. We appreciate that you've been so flexible, both as panelists and audience, in terms of giving us these extra minutes as we really kind of exploited the conversation. I know we still have questions. You will be getting an email, as I mentioned. Please do feel free to reach out, and we can do our best to answer these questions. You can see that I have the surfboards. I'm not the surfer, Steve, but it's in the spirit of, we were really keen to get out and kind of hit those destinations soon. I'm very much hoping that the thoughts that we had today are going to really inspire people in the sector to know what are those things that we should be addressing, what do people have top of mind, and also hopefully that we can kind of come up with these coordinated actions and attempts that will really bring forward some of the dimensions about the investment that needs to be done in these campaigns, and really just the critical piece that they play in revitalizing the economy. So thank you so much again for your time. It was a fantastic conversation, and hopefully I know that we'll be having some region specific ones in the near future, and look forward to having you join us for those as well. Have a great afternoon and stay healthy and safe. Thank you, everyone.